Hello. Apoorv, can I start?
Yeah, I'm good to go.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Abhishek Jain, and I'm pleased to invite you all to the fourth episode of the fellowship series by Plant. Towards the end of the session, we will also be having a Q&A session for which I will request you all to put your questions in the live chat box that will be appearing on the right side of your computer screens. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us Apoorv Shah, a graduate of the 2013 batch from GNLU, who was also awarded the prestigious Teach for India Fellowship in the year 2013. He worked as a program manager at TFI for 3 years, during which he went on to personally coach, train, and manage numerous fellows. He currently serves as a city director at Teach for India. In this session, Apoorv will be speaking in detail on the Teach for India Fellowship. I would now like to hand it over to Apoorv and Neil to begin the session.
Thank you, Abhishek. Hello, everyone. I hope my audio is audible enough for everyone, and I hope all of you are ready. What I'll do is over the next 20-30 minutes, share a lot about Teach for India, the Teach for India Fellowship Program. It will be a mix of some stories from my experience of working with Teach for India, but essentially it will be a lot about what is the fellowship, why does the fellowship exist, and why is it important that people like you should join the fellowship program. What I want you to do is think about when you decided that you wanted to become a lawyer, what was the reason behind it? Think about why you wanted to become a lawyer. I'll give you 10 seconds, just think about what was the reason, what was the rationale behind deciding that, yeah, I want to be a law student, I want to be a lawyer. While you're thinking about it, I'll share why I wanted to become a lawyer. When I was in seventh grade, I decided that law is what I wanted to do. I realized how justice as a value was something that was very, very important to me. I I realized that in my day-to-day conversations with people, justice was something that sparked interest in me. That was something that moved me. I also realized that I loved my analytical ability was something that I wanted to develop. And I thought that there was nothing as good as becoming a law student and learning about different laws that essentially are rules of how the world functions. And so I knew that to combine my love for justice and to learn analytical skills, I should become a lawyer. So that's when my journey to become a lawyer started. But as I was in college, I realized that even though I was learning about how to be a lawyer, it was still pretty theoretical, right? So the practical aspects of what happens to these laws once we are trying to implement them never actually came up during law school. Internships were great, and they gave you a reality of how different theory and practical were, but you never actually knew till you never actually know something till you completely experience it. Over the course of the over the course of the over the course of law school as well, I realized how education was something that drew me closer to what I really, really cared about, which was how do we make sure that the genetic lottery of your future being determined by where you are born and what socio-economical conditions you are born in. How do you reduce the power of that genetic lottery that essentially I had the privilege for, and probably a lot of us have had the privilege of? And that's when I decided that I wanted to know more about the education sector and work in the education sector possibly. I was in my third year when I interned with the state secretary for education with the Gujarat government. This was, I think, the winter of my third year of law school. And during this time, during the 2 months of the internship, I realized how much work is there which we can do in the education field, and how it gave me a lot of energy, and it made use of everything that I was learning in class and to make a difference. So right after the fellowship, right after law school, I joined the fellowship program in 2013. I taught 90 students in two different classes in grade 7 and grade 8. I was their English and civics teacher, subjects that I chose definitely because of my law background. And I realized how curious everyone is about stuff that you study in your first year or second year of law school, and how easy it is for people to see implementation of those learnings in their real world. I had amazing students. They were very curious. They wanted to know everything. We learned debating. We learned debating together. So we taught them parliamentary debating, and they participated in in a city level competition that thankfully they won. And I think that's when I realized how potential of people is something that is untapped in our country. Like so many people are in our country, their potential remains untapped because of the opportunities that they get or the kind of education that they get. And to a very large extent, I think I realized that I care so much about the education sector almost when I joined Teach for India, not before that. And so I'm very grateful that I got the opportunity. And since then, I have told everyone that it's probably the best decision I've made in my entire life. There are, to tell you a little bit more about why Teach for India exists and why I have now realized why education is important. India has a lot of challenges, and so do all countries. But I think poverty, gender, environment, healthcare, and some of these have become even more pronounced during COVID-19 now. They are very deep rooted challenges. And what I've realized is how, even though there are multiple interventions that millions of people in the country are trying around some of these things, education is the key lever. It's definitely not the silver bullet for all problems in the country or in the world, but it's definitely a key lever towards which I believe we should spend as many resources as possible. And if you are someone who wants to have an impact in the country or in the world, working in the education sector is probably the best use of time and resources. We've also realized during COVID-19 how privileged some of us are. Like you are watching this on an internet, you have a device, but and you're seeing how there is a small section of society or a small section of students, school-going students, who are able to continue with their education as if almost as if nothing has changed for them. But there is a very large part of the society which now has no access to education. Not just quality education, they have absolutely no access to education. So on one hand, I'm glad that there are some students whose education is not affected. On the other hand, I've also seen the reality of how less than 50% of students in the country have access to any kind of education right now. And what we've seen is that the education crisis that is there, all of us have known these numbers. We've read these in papers. The ASA report by Pratham Foundation comes out every year and tells us that our education system has a two-pronged problem. One is that students who are going to school are not getting quality education and they are not mastering the content and the concepts that they need to. And second, that a lot of our students drop out very early. The second part is actually a cause as an effect of the first part, which is to say, in elementary school, if I see that education, the kind of education I'm receiving and what I'm using in the skills that I'm using in life are very different from each other. My interest in going to school, my interest in continuing education, and not just mine, my parents' interest in continuing my education drops significantly. So you can see that if a third grader cannot do subtraction, if majority of our third graders cannot do subtraction and half of our fifth graders cannot read a grade 2 text, then we are seeing that 40% of them actually don't go to secondary school. That's a huge chunk of the population lost in the very early days of their development. We're also seeing that 74% of our students actually don't make it to college. If you're in college right now, if you've just finished college, imagine you're in the top 26% of the country just because you went to college. Not to a great college, not to a good college, but to a college. In whichever degree you chose, with whatever area you live in. If you just went to college, you are in the top 26% of the country. At Teach for India, we believe that this is not good. The bar for what you need to do to get into the top 25% of the country should not be just get into college. Imagine now that you are in, say, a top 10 college for a top 10 law school. You are probably in the top 5% of people in your field. Then in terms of educational qualifications and we all know how getting into a great college, getting into a great university is the pathway to getting great opportunities post college as well. And think about all the opportunities that you miss just because you don't go to college. And think about how 74% of students in our country face that every single day. And this is an education crisis because of which Teach for India exists, right? If if access and if access and quality, both of those are solved for in the education system, Teach for India would happily focus on something else. As of now, we are seeing that 300 million children. The truth is that the education of 300 million children of India was already challenging and complex, and then, well, we all know what happened with COVID, and it's become much worse. But let's pause for a second and think about, like, what if it didn't have to be this way, right? For the past 5 minutes, I've shared a lot of facts which are, to be very honest, very depressing to hear. And now is a chance for you to think about, like, what if we didn't have to continue this way? What if this is not how the world should continue working, or the education system should continue working? What if we could create opportunities like we created for Priyanka? Priyanka, who studied in Epiphany English Medium School in Pune. She comes from a very challenging, like her family background is really, really challenging. But then she got a chance to be a part of a musical that Teach for India organized, and her idea of what she wanted in life, what skills she had that she could leverage, changed completely. She went from someone who was very shy and afraid to share to someone who was independent, someone who was reflective, and someone who was very, very confident. Today, she studies. She went to complete her schooling in United World College in Italy and is currently a student at Franklin and Marshall University in the United States. To think that this is someone who lived in a community in Pune and is now in a great college in the US, and that journey is something that as an organization and everyone in Priyanka's life has been able to do, gives me a lot of hope. Similarly, Raghavendra, he is a student from Mumbai. You can read his story here as well, and he's someone who is truly inspirational, right? If you ever think about how can I meet a 15-year-old who makes me wish like I was more like him, you should meet Raghavendra. His thought process, his his willingness to take everyone along, bring change, not just for himself but also for people around him, is absolutely fantastic. He was inspired by McKinsey, that was working with Teach for India for a while in Mumbai, and he created his own organization, a free consultancy company as such, a startup that gives free consultancy towards fostering student leadership and creating sustainable structures for change in the society. He currently supports 6 student-led projects in the school. He helps them plan, he helps them strategize, he helps them execute their vision. These projects that he's helping or supporting right now work on issues like gender equality, peer teaching, communal harmony, and so on. Raghav, I see Raghav in the future working with more people and making sure that he's taking everyone along on the path to progress. These are examples of what is possible. In a country where we see so many challenges in the education sector, these are bright spots that we believe should be normal. All of our children should be able to do this. And we believe at Teach for India that one day all of this will be possible. One day we will be able to attain an excellent education for all children of the country. And we believe that through the fellowship program, we are going to build a movement of leaders to eliminate education inequity. I'd like to take you back to the genetic lottery that I referred to at the beginning, which is to say, where you are born, what socioeconomic background you're from, should not dictate or almost decide what you do with your life. And we believe that that is possible when we are able to ensure that all children attain an excellent education. Teach for India as an organization does not tell you here are 3 things that solve for like that can eliminate educational inequity. Just keep doing more and more of these 3 things. Let's just get a million people doing these 3 things. We know that education is not a straightforward problem. In our terms, we call it a wicked problem, which means that there are multiple aspects to it, and hence there are multiple interventions that are going to be very, very nuanced. And we know that one something that works in an Ahmedabad will not work in a Mumbai, will not work in a Pune, will not work in a Hyderabad. And so we want to build a movement of leaders who join the education sector and work towards eliminating educational inequity in ways that they seem fit. If you work in a smaller area or with a specific group of people, you can tailor your solutions to their needs. And that's what we need in the education sector. But it's not something that anyone can do alone, and hence a movement of leaders. We have a two-part theory of change in the organization. In the short term, what we believe is we can hire, or we want to find and recruit high quality individuals who are interested in working in the education sector and changing the education sector, and throughout, and give them as much training as possible, to give them an experience of what the education sector looks like, to give them training to become leaders, to build skills and build that orientation of working for the movement over the 2 years of the fellowship. And you do that by being placed in an under resourced school for 2 years and teaching a subject, right? We believe that you can read articles, you can talk to people, and you can probably watch documentaries about the education sector, but you will learn more about the education sector only when you are there on the ground. We also believe that if through the fellowship we are able to prove that through the fellowship we're able to provide students in our classrooms excellent teachers from second grade to 10th grade, and we see that they are on a significantly improved life path at the end of those 8 years, which which is a testament to our belief that if students get great teachers throughout school life, irrespective of what their education, of what their background is, of what their socioeconomic background is, they will be able to do amazing work. We've seen our students perform not just at the same level as students from high income schools, but also beyond. And we believe that over the last 11 years of the organization, we've been able to prove that excellent teachers is a fantastic key lever in order to attain excellent education. That's the short-term theory of change, which is to say, let's prove that excellent teachers in any circumstance will make sure that students from any background are able to do great work. In the long run, we want our alumni, which is people who have done the fellowship program, to then create systemic change and fuel the larger movement. The only thing common between all of our alumni is the fact that they've done the fellowship. We have people from very, very diverse geographical areas, academic areas, age, experience, everything. And we know that the fellowship experience is what guides their interventions post the fellowship program as well. And so through the alumni movement, we believe that we'll be able to achieve the scale that is needed to reach out to 300 million children in the country. In the fellowship journey, I'll give you a small snapshot of what happens in the fellowship journey so that you know what is inside the 2 years as well. You are teaching in a classroom for 2 years. It's a full-time job. We don't teach only on weekends or only for a couple of hours a day. You get ongoing support towards your training and development. So you do build skills and mindsets and skills and mindsets towards becoming a leader. You do get training and exposure through our foundational training program, which we call Institute. There are conferences, there are internship opportunities during these 2 years, and there are multiple leaders of the education space and broadly the development space that you get to meet that enhance your experience and your understanding of the education sector. What I'll do now is I'm going to show you a short video of a Teach for India classroom. It's from one of our past fellows called Nida, and this is her third grade classroom. These are students who are in the third standard in a low-income private school in Ahmedabad. And what we are going to do now is watch a short video. What I'd like you to do when I'm sharing this is, what skills and mindsets do you think that Nida needs to provide an excellent education? What are you seeing play out in the teacher's skills and mindsets when you're watching this video? And also, the other thing I'd like you to do is think about when you were in third grade, what kind of education did you receive versus what you're seeing in the video right now? I'm going to play the video.
Today we are going to talk and experience a little about what are the challenges faced by blind people. Okay? First, do you remember what the last line of our classroom vision says? Yes. We believe in ourselves and we lead others towards growth and change. If we really feel how they feel and how they think and how they feel about being blind, we can then lead them towards some change. Okay? How do you know a person is blind? Think, take 10 seconds. In your life, have you seen a blind person in your life? And if you have seen them, how do you know that they are blind?
Close, and in our city there was one girl, there was only one eye closed and one eye open only.
They have a stick that they can make it small also and keep it in their pocket also and make them like long and then walk with that.
We are going to experience how it feels like to be blind. Okay? Are you comfortable? Who's next? The others. What you need to do is you are going to look at what they are doing and take some notes. What you're supposed to do now is you will take out your lunch box from your bag and eat your food. Okay? You will get 10 more seconds, and the last one is ZERO. Alright, great. You can open your dupatta. Group 2, raise your hands. Yeah. You are going to take out a fresh page, write down your name, your school's name, and your birth, and your and what did you have for breakfast today in 3 different lines. You have to go to Priyanka Didi's classroom and bring me a chalk. Are they taking help from each other? See. Are they going in the wrong direction? See that also. We will stop here. Open your dupattas. After the experiences that we all had as a group, okay, did your experience change your understanding of blind people?
First time I understand what they are challenges, what they face when I am blind and you say go to Priyanka Didi class. I can't go, I feel so sad. I understand they are trying to brave and I went there. So there was a wall and I think that I will scratch from the wall and I will scratch from the wall. When they were going, so they were so scared that I would not fall down. I tried my best that I can do, but still I got hurt.
I am going to take a next class. Our next class on EBS will be how to bring out solutions, okay, on blind people. I will tell you how we can actually come up with strong solutions. After which I'll give you some new challenge and you have to come up with solutions. Is that okay?
This was a third grade Teach for India classroom. Think about all the skills and mindsets that the teacher needs to provide the excellent education that you just saw, right? An experiential way of learning. How do you think blind people feel, or what are challenges that blind people feel? This is a classroom which 18 months before this video was shot barely knew words in English, right? They were in second grade, they barely knew words in English. And that according to me is the power of the fellowship program. But before I jump into that, focusing on Nida as the fellow in the school, right? Here are certain skills or competencies that are needed to become a great Teach for India fellow, right? You have to set clear goals. You have to build relationships with students, with their parents, with other teachers in the school, with the school principal. You have to learn how to plan lessons. You have to learn how to execute lessons, and you have to adapt continuously to situations that are probably not something that you can anticipate very easily, because you are in an under resourced government school or a under resourced low income private school. The resources are of course limited, even if sometimes they're not there and sometimes they're limited. So you have to learn how to manage all of those things. And then we asked ourselves, when we say we build leaders, what does it mean to be a leader, right? Like we said, we want to build a movement of leaders. What we just saw are things that teachers need in a classroom, and then we thought, okay, but we are building leaders. What does it mean to be a leader in the world? And we realized that leaders have a vision. Leaders are able to invest other people into that vision. They're able to plan purposefully. They're able to facilitate spaces. They have to build good judgment and have to be flexible, and they have to be resourceful. Right? These are essentially CEO of a company or of a startup essentially use the same competencies that are mentioned as a leader, right? Like those are people that we generally look at when we are thinking about a leader. You can also take sports examples to say what kind of a leader is, say, Virat Kohli for cricket, right? And like what kind of vision does he set for the team? How do you invest people to join that team and work for the team? And then we realized, hey, like what great teachers need, what makes teachers great and what makes a leader are actually very similar to each other, if not same in a lot of instances. And so we believe that teaching is leadership. It's not different. It's the outcomes you chase when you are a leader in another field might be different, but the competencies you use or the frame of mind that you need to be in are actually the same. And that's what teaching is leadership is, the basic tenet on which we run the fellowship program right now. What we've seen is that our alumni strengthen the movement as leaders who are committed to bringing this change. We've seen that the skills that you saw here are skills that our alumni are using in very, very different spaces, and they're building a great vision. They have set up organizations for themselves which have fantastic visions. They've invested others. They are planning. Even during COVID, we saw how the way they've adapted to situations, the way they've planned their future in shorter bursts right now has been absolutely amazing to see. And we've seen this not as a one-off, but as a continuous thing across all of our alumni. We currently have 3,400 people who have finished the fellowship and joined the alumni movement. We've seen that 34% of our alumni actually work in direct impact pathways in the education sector. We've seen 31% of them actually work in an indirect impact pathway in the education sector. Apart from these people who work directly in the education sector, we also have 408 alumni, or 12% of our alumni, who work in the dev sector in areas which are surrounding education, like health, nutrition, gender, and livelihood. We've also seen that some of our alumni actually have gone back to the private sector or have joined the private sector and are now working towards the vision by getting the private sector to engage with the education sector or with the development sector as such. And 9% of our alumni are actually scattered across a lot of different other sectors. In essence, around 10% of our fellows, when they come in, have teaching experience of any kind. Not just our teachers, they have teaching experience of any kind. So 90% of our people actually don't have any teaching experience when they join, or education sector experience when they join. But what we've seen is that 77% of our alumni continue to work in the education and the large scale social sector towards bridging the equity gap in education. There are a few places where we're seeing our alumni go to after their fellowship program. There are quite a few organizations in the education sector, for example, Life Labs, Central Square Foundation. There are a lot of other dev sector organizations like Dasra, Dream a Dream, Azim Premji Foundation, XSTEP. JPAL, World Bank, Dalberg. A lot of them are working with the government or in the government as such. We have people who are joining corporates, and we have a lot of people who have gone to study for higher education after doing the fellowship as well. Here are people who have started organizations every cohort in alumni organizations and influencers across every cohort. I'll give you a minute to just maybe see if you have seen some of these organizations. They are still less than 10 years old, but they've already been doing some fantastic work. We've seen that our alumni have actually founded 150 organizations in total, and our 3,400 alumni collectively reach 30 million children in the country right now. Right? Between 3,400 people, they impact directly or indirectly around 30 million children in the country. That's 10% of all children in the country, as big as India. 1 in every 10 child in India has been impacted in a direct or an indirect way by the work that the Teach for India alumni has done. But then all of this is why the Teach Fellowship exists, why the fellowship exists, why is it needed, and what are things you learn in the fellowship program. But the main question that everyone has is, why should I join the fellowship? And why should you join the fellowship? I truly believe that the fellowship experience is a once in a lifetime opportunity for a lot of people. I feel like everyone who does anything at all in the world, right, should once do the fellowship. And the reasons for those are: one, it lets you understand the world and the way the world works in a way where, like, no other job, no other internship does, no other college degree also does. Second, I believe education is something that all of us should be bothered about, because it will at some point of time or the other impact us in ways in which won't be able to control later on. I see a lot of my friends right now thinking about, oh, what's happening in the world, what's happening in the country, why are people very polarized in their political views, in their social views. And I believe it does go back to what kind of education did all of us receive. And it's not a problem we can solve right now as easily, but it's a problem that we can solve when we work on the ground and we work on children when they're young. We educate our children when they're younger, so that we can avoid certain problems from cropping up. I also feel that as someone who studies laws, it gives you an insight into, so, like, I heard about why laws are made, how laws are made, why they're important and all of that, but what happens on the ground, right? Like, implementation is a completely different ball game than creation of laws. And you will be able to see what happens on the ground, not just for the laws which relate to education, but all kinds of laws. What impact does it have on the country's most vulnerable group, which are our children who are from social economically poor backgrounds? And that's why I strongly believe that all law students, like, this is a fantastic opportunity for all law students as well, to say, after I finish college, can I dedicate 2 years to work on the ground and learn how to make a difference in the society? For your future, it is a leadership development program for the future of students and families and their families. Um, it it is something that they all deserve, because every child in the country and every person in the country deserves it, and you become a vessel to provide that to them. And for our future as our country, you get a chance to build a better version of the country we live in. There are multiple deadlines to applying to the Teach for India Fellowship Program. I'll also explain the selection process a little bit. First, the deadline is 17. The next deadline is 17 January. This is our third and second last deadline for the year. We encourage everyone to apply sooner in the year rather than later to all of our deadlines, so that you have more clarity and we have more clarity on the number of people we'll have in the next year as fellows. For the selection process, the first part is an application form, which if you go to apply.teachforindia.org, you will be able to access. That's the only way to start to apply to the fellowship program. So once you fill in that application form, we will process, like the first stage is the application stage process. If you clear that stage, you go on to a phone interview stage, where someone from Teach for India will give you a call and ask you a few questions around your application. If you clear the phone interview stage as well, then there is a day long process, what we call an assessment center. In the assessment center, you are asked to send a 5-minute teaching video. There's a group discussion with other applicants, and there is a critical thinking test that happens. Along with all three of these, there's a personal interview that happens one-on-one with one of our staff members. So that if you clear all of these stages, then you're offered the fellowship program, and then you will have a choice to join. If you want more information about Teach for India, we have put Neil and my email ID here. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about the fellowship program, about Teach for India as an organization, or about the education sector in general, right? So feel free to reach out to us and talk to us about the fellowship program. We can help you figure out if it's the right choice for you. I think at Teach for India, we strongly believe that it's not just us selecting fellows, it's also the fellows selecting us as a place that they want to work in. I'll pause with that to see if Abhishek has any questions, or if there have been any questions on chat.
Thanks a lot, Apoorv. I think that was a very, very detailed session. I think you have explained what the fellowship actually offers you after 2 intensive years, and I think that's really, really useful. I would want to divide my presentation, my questions for your presentation into a few parts. I think first I just go towards the specific part of the application process itself. So if I understand correctly, the application process has 3 different stages. So my questions are very specifically to the first stage and to the test itself. Like, do you really think that as a law student we need to put in some kind of time to prepare for that test, or is there any kind of like a prior mock test or something that we should do, and how we should go about our preparation for the same?
Yeah. So the application form is actually and you have to write a few essays, and those essays are like you don't have to submit them all at the same time. So you can go back to the application, you can read the questions, think about it, go back to the application and fill it. There are 3 or 4 essays that you have to write in total. You can write one of them, save your application, and come back to it a little later as well. For the tests that are there, they're basically situational judgment test and critical thinking tests. So if anything that you might study for, or the way you prep for, say, the common law admission test, right, the CLAT, you can prepare the same way for this. There's nothing else. There's no education specific questions that we are asking. There's no knowledge based, like we'll not ask you what's the literacy rate of a particular state, or what are laws around education during these tests. So there's no that education specific prep that you might want to do, but definitely I think critical thinking and situational judgment are two things that you can prepare for in any way that you would prepare for any other test. So nothing specific.
All right, I think that's a very, very good answer, and I think that really helps because it removes that extra stress that you have, that, oh my God, I need to prepare for another exam. So that's really good. But so one more thing that I really wanted to know was that in the application process itself, considering that most of the applications that happen post your UG degree do require a CV or do look at your profile. So how much weight do you think in terms of CV or profile does TFI actually give to the applicant's profile?
Yeah, so we don't actually ask for your CV. The application form is where you put down most of the information from your CV. We have a like a weighted program in terms of like what do we give as much importance to, but it's not just the amount of like just the scores that you've received in your law school, or which law school you went to as such, but it's also a lot on what kind of experiences you've had, what leadership potential. Like, we're essentially looking for potential leaders. We're not looking for people who are already, like, we're not saying you have to be a leader when you join the fellowship program. We're saying, do you have the skills and the competencies to become a fellow? And throughout the fellowship experience, you'll become a leader, or you'll you'll develop on those skills to become a leader. So what we are looking for is essentially potential. So if you've led teams or if you've led groups of people during your law school or during any other during your law school, then those definitely help in us seeing potential. So we are asking you about life experiences and life experiences that might tell us more about your leadership potential more than the score that you received on a test.
Oh, all right. I think that's again very, very interesting because again, that does remove most of the pressure that you have for most fellowships and other jobs that you apply for post law school. So that's very interesting. I think my last question with respect to the application process is with respect to this third stage that you spoke about, where you actually come in for a day and you actually almost get a glimpse of what your life as a fellow would be. So I think I just wanted you to tell us a little bit more about how you think we could actually prepare for it, given that most of us don't have any kind of teaching experience, and that might just be something which is very scary for some of us.
Absolutely. So one, I feel like sometimes it helps that you don't have teaching experience, because you then have a fresh perspective or a fresh take on how you would teach a particular topic. That's one. But second, I think like if you just Google what are some teaching best practices, how do you make lesson plans, you'll find incredible number of resources that teachers around the world have made freely available for everyone, right? So that is one. Second, I feel like if you clear the first couple of stages before you are supposed to send a teaching video or something, we do give you sort of like a packet which says, here are some things that you should think about when you're planning your lesson. Here are topics or areas that you can teach about in your 5-minute teaching. So it's essentially just a 5-minute teaching video that you have to submit. So we understand that you don't have teaching experience. What we are looking for is, say, how do you think about how are you, if you were put on a spot and if we gave you essentially unlimited time to plan a lesson and execute it, what would it look like right now? So again, I'll go back to, we are looking for how, like, your potential to become a great teacher, not are you a great teacher right now. So I had no experience, right? I had done like 4.5 years of law school when I taught my 5-minute class, and I taught about the division of power between like legislative, executive, and judiciary. So that's something that's knowledge I can lean on, and I can break it down to an 8th grade level and then teach it. So that's what I leaned on at that point of time, and I'm sure all of us know something that, say, someone in school might find really, really interesting and can teach it in a very interesting way in 5 minutes. So I think that's what I would focus on when I'm preparing for the sample teaching, the teaching video.
All right. I think another very, very interesting question that we have got, which is particularly relevant for law students, is how many law students in your experience have you actually seen that have applied for this kind of a fellowship immediately after law school? And also, like, what was your experience with them? Like, did you feel that they probably had an edge over applicants from different streams, or did you feel that they were having more difficulties or anything of that sort?
Yeah, I do think that, like, it depends on which law school you went to, because it essentially, which law school you went to talks about your critical thinking ability to an extent, right? I'm not saying it's the only way you find out someone's critical thinking ability, but it's a barometer of that. So I feel like if you went to if you're a decentish student during school and during college, then you probably don't have any major challenges in getting through to the fellowship program. The fellowship program is hard, right? Irrespective of what you've done in life and what has happened to you in life before the fellowship's definitely going to be hard. So I would definitely not underestimate what happens during the fellowship and how tough it is. But I would say, if as a law student, what might help is the fact that during law school, it's 3 to 5 years, depending on which type of law school you went to, and you get a lot of chances to showcase your leadership ability. Like, there are events that happen, there are clubs that are there. So there are multiple places where you can showcase your leadership ability. And I feel like the study of law in general helps you think critically and problem solve a lot better. So I feel like lawyers or law students have an edge there amongst, say, other people. And I think if you've done internships in the right spaces, or if you've interned in the dev sector, hopefully with Teach for India, maybe, then those are things that build a lot of exposure of what happens or what impacts the ground, like what kind of policies impact the ground and how do they impact the ground, because you've probably studied policies and their impact on the ground throughout law school. So I think those are things that give you a leg up over people who have not gone to law school.
All right, all right. I think that's again a very interesting take. So again, I think my next question is directed particularly towards law students and recent law graduates. So since you mentioned through your presentation and also as it became clear through your video, the very expectation of this fellowship is very different from a lot of other fellowships and a lot of other programs that you might do post your law school. So how do you think a law student could get the best experience of what is in store for him or her after they actually join this fellowship so that they can be sure that they're making the right decision?
I just want to clarify, you're saying you're talking about post the fellowship, what kind of opportunities can they leverage, and like what kind of mind frame should they enter the fellowship so that they're able to do something amazing after the fellowship program?
Actually, in this question, I'm looking more towards when a student is joining, how can he or she be sure that this is something they'll be able to pull off, given how tough the fellowship actually is for those 2 years? So, like, I think you mentioned that there's a TFI internship. So, can you just tell us a bit about things that might give a student an exposure as to what's in store for him if he or she joins the fellowship?
Absolutely. So, the TFI internship I referred to was, say, before joining the fellowship program. Also, you can intern with us on our website. You'll see avenues for engaging with Teach for India, which are part-time in nature right now. But I think during the fellowship program, what helps is, so essentially all holidays in school are holidays for fellows. So you have in certain cities a Diwali break, in certain cities a Christmas break, but definitely in all cities you have a summer break, right? Which is the month and a half between the first year of the fellowship and the second year, which is summer vacation when you're in school, but summer vacation when you're in the fellowship as well. So that's the 1 month, 1.5 month period where we encourage our fellows to take up an internship. So you've experienced the fellowship for a year, you've gotten to know students in your classroom, the school, the community that you're placed in, and you've probably thought about what kind of work do I want to do after the fellowship program. So then the internship program between the 2 years gives you a chance to actually go and experience what working in that sector feels like. So if you feel like I want to, say, create curriculum or work on assessments or work with other teachers, or say just continue to be a great teacher after the fellowship as well. So then the internship program helps you experience what your post fellowship might look like in a 1 month package as such, right? It's essentially the same as an internship during law school, which is you get a taste of what real full-time work in a particular field might look like. So you definitely get that. Along with that, during the course of the 2 years, we encourage all of our fellows to do something called Be the Change Project. We call them BTCPs, Be the Change Projects. And those projects are essentially, say, if you are someone who thinks, hey, maybe I want to start an organization of my own, which works in the development sector, which is probably at an intersection of law and education, for example. How do I pilot it? So in your second year of the fellowship, through the Be the Change projects that we do, you can pilot that at a very small scale in your classroom, in your school, in the community, or in the city that you're placed in. And those are the kind of things that you generally don't get when you're, say, doing a full-time job somewhere else, or maybe in some other fellowships as well.
Okay, I think I've already asked you too many questions. So I think my last question is basically going to be very specific towards the opportunities that one does get post completing this fellowship. But also more specifically, could you also possibly talk about when, let's say, a law student completes this fellowship immediately after law school, does it, like, increase the possible opportunities that he or she may have in the legal stream itself, in the legal sector itself? Like anything on that note?
Absolutely. So I think one is, if you're planning on studying ahead, right? Like planning on doing your master's in, say, public policy or public administration of any kind, then the fellowship program is an opportunity like no other. Every year we have at least 10 to 15 people from Teach for India who apply and get through fantastic masters of public policy courses across the world. So I think for higher education, this would be a fantastic 2-year work experience for any law student. If you are someone who wants to start their own organization or their own law firm, or wants to say work in a reputed non-profit organization which works at the intersection of law and any social sector as such, then this is definitely something that gives you an immense heads up. If you want to work for a consultancy company like say a McKinsey or BCG, and they require a lot of people who work at the intersection of law and development, and this is relevant work experience for those kind of jobs as well. But to be very fair, I think I've seen a lot of people join the fellowship thinking I will do X after the fellowship, but the experience of the fellowship tells them that, hey, maybe I'm interested in doing Y, right? So if you are someone who's say a people person who likes working with people and managing and say skill building and others, then you might do something like a teacher training after the fellowship program. And you don't exactly use the knowledge pieces of your law school as much when you do teacher training after the fellowship, but you still use the skills, right? So you still have to plan, you still have to execute, you still have to think about what implications do change in laws have on what kind of training I give my teachers and how my teachers function in a classroom. So I think you still use competencies that you learn, or skills you learn in law school in other roles as well. Maybe not knowledge pieces all the time, right? For now, like as my role as city director, I don't actually use I don't actually use case laws in any space, even though that's what I learned through during 5 years of college, but I don't have to use them anymore. But I still keep a track of what educational policy is, what changes are happening, at what level do I have to influence or work towards influencing when I'm working in the education sector. And I think my law background helps a lot in those aspects as well. So I think it's more of how do you leverage your strengths and not just knowledge that you have towards making change or doing something that you want in life. But as I said, I shared in the beginning of some particular, like you can work for a JPAL or like a Central Square Foundation or an Indus Action, which essentially work on policy framing and policy implementation. I think that's the easiest overlap between law and education, that people, if you're inclined that way, that might be the path for you.
All right, I think that really answers the question. So thanks a lot for that, because that does throw in a lot of light on why we as law students could take this up. So that's really interesting. I think that basically brings me to the end of my questions, and I would just like to thank you for actually coming in and taking out the time to conduct this session. So yeah, if you have any parting remarks, please go ahead, Apoorv.
Absolutely. So thank you for inviting me. I hope this was useful, and I hope everyone who sees this gets a better idea of what the Teach for India fellowship is and what does it entail as such. And I feel like if you have any questions, I shared my email ID in the beginning of the video as well. Towards the end of the video as well. So feel free to reach out to me or Neil for any questions that you have. If you actually do know people that might want to do the fellowship, if it's not you, right? We understand that like personal circumstances sometimes determine our choices in life. And if it's not you, but if you know someone else who might be perfect for doing the fellowship, right? Recommend them. We've seen that people who get recommended to do the fellowship actually are some of the people who enjoy the fellowship the most, like by their friends, by their families, by say their parents or relatives as such. So if you do the fellowship, that's great. If you know someone else who can do the fellowship, spread the word and let them know that they can reach out to us. So the email IDs are for anyone and everyone. You can share them with them, and we'll be more than happy to add more leaders to the movement. But thank you for the opportunity, and I hope this was helpful for everyone.
Thanks a lot, Apoorv. And like seriously, a big thanks to the Teach for India Fellowship also to agreeing for this session. I think it was very, very useful. So we just want to thank you once again on behalf of Team Plant.